Okay, back to the example. Now that we've got all of the details of the tasks that we want to do, we get to put them into categories or types. So I'm going to put in some categories in the type column that match the tasks. Bookkeeping is finance, as is managing finance. Staff reviews is HR. Blogs and content is social media, whereas press relations is marketing. The three things I like are all in the product category, whereas the customer and client stuff is all about sales. Now let's look at the blog/content task and the press relations task. We've got social media for one and marketing for the other. Realistically, these are both just marketing. We're not big enough as a company to have those as separate roles. So now our blogs and content and our press relations are all merged into the marketing category. Now we're going to sort them by their type and then their details so they're all in order. Go sort range. First by column A, then by column B. Okay, now the fun bit. We get to look back at the pivot table in the summary tab. Notice how each of the categories that we put in the type column have shown up as categories in our pivot table. Then the total of each of those categories comes up in the summary. Let's look into one specifically. So the sum total for me in finance is 5. That's because for bookkeeping I've got 3, and for managing finance I've got 2. So it sums up the total column from this spreadsheet and populates it into this sheet. So if we look at my totals in the product category, we can see that I get through the roof scores. This is because I'm really good at it, I really like it, and we actually think it's really important for the company. So on our pivot table, my product score is through the roof. We can also see that Layla is really strong in HR. And surprise, surprise, we both suck at marketing, which was the reason we started this process in the first place. Now you see how the pivot table works with the categorization. Let's show you what one looks like with a whole bunch of tasks in it. You can see we have finance, HR, management, marketing, product, and sales. These get summed up in the pivot table, and we can see the sum totals for both Layla and myself. We can also see a grand total for each person. The useful thing about this is we can see if the tasks are kind of like unfairly weighted. If we have 30 items on finance, it means that we're going to have 30 times the numbers. So it's good to keep your categories kind of fairly weighted. Now let's look at adding in a whole new category. Let's say we're doing a whole bunch of tech, coding and tech strategy and all that kind of stuff. We can add in a new category with a whole bunch of new tasks and ratings from 1 to 10 for myself and Layla. Because of the way the pivot table is set up, this creates a new category and bubbles up the totals to the relevant columns. Let's try it again for events. We put in a whole bunch of event tasks like talent management and booking venues and supplier coordination. We put in my and Layla's capability and preferences, and all of that appears on the summary page under events. This is like finally the reveal. We get to see where our gaps are. As expected, Layla and I both have a big gap in events. We don't like doing them and we're not very good at them. We also have a pretty big gap in finance. Maybe that's another hire we can make down the road. Layla's really strong in HR and management, whereas I counterbalance that with strengths in product. The sales and technology stuff seems to be kind of like fairly weighted between the two of us. And as expected, we have a big gap in marketing. So our original guess that we were weak in both events and marketing turns out to be true. Now in the resources section of this lesson, we've given you both the blank template and our version that's fully filled out, so you can play around with both of them. The important thing is that you're as comprehensive as you can be without overdoing it too much. So if you've done this process well, you've probably learned that you have some obvious gaps, like we have, in this case, events and marketing. We also have some less obvious gaps, like in our case, finance. Now that we've got some real texture and detail about what gaps we have and what skills are required to fill that gap, we finally get to make the position description.